What if I told you the reason you exist is because your ancestor once ate dirt? Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. Actual dirt, actual clay pulled from the ground and swallowed, deliberately, because the alternative was watching their children die. And it worked. That one decision, and hundreds like it, is the reason a chain of survival stretched unbroken across 74,000 years, through volcanic winters, through decade-long droughts, through the near extinction of our entire species, and landed, somehow in you. Sitting here, watching a video. You didn't earn this life. You inherited it. From people who did things you cannot imagine, in conditions you would not survive for a week. So, let's talk about what they actually did. Because the full story is stranger, darker, and more fascinating than any survival show you've ever watched. And it starts with a number. 3,000. Not 3,000 in your city. Not 3,000 in your country. 3,000 human beings. On the entire planet. At the same time. That was us, 74,000 years ago, after a supervolcano in Indonesia blocked out the sun and collapsed the food chain across 3 continents. We were one bad season away from becoming a footnote in the fossil record. We didn't become a footnote. And the reason why is going to make you deeply uncomfortable about your own life. When you imagine ancient famine, what do you picture? Skinny people eating berries? Close, but way too optimistic. Ancient famine wasn't one bad winter. It was the complete, systematic erasure of every food source a community depended on for years. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica let scientists read ancient climate like a newspaper, and what they show is devastating. Between 40,000 and 10,000 years ago, Europe and Central Asia experienced catastrophic food collapse cycles roughly every 80 to 120 years. Not droughts, collapses. The kind where entire ecosystems reorganize, migratory animals vanish, and plant species shift hundreds of kilometers. Archaeologists excavating Neolithic sites in Germany found mass burials with a chilling pattern. No trauma, no epidemic markers, just small dense bones with stress lines. The skeletal signature of chronic starvation. These weren't war victims. These were communities that simply ran out of options. One study found that some Neolithic European populations shrank by up to 60% during a single climate-driven food collapse around 5,500 years ago. More than half. Gone. In one event. So no, this wasn't eat less meat for a month. This was an extinction-level pressure test. And here's what nobody tells you. The ones who survived weren't necessarily the strongest, or the fastest, or even the most resourceful. Some of them survived because of something invisible, something already written inside them before the famine even started. Has your phone ever gone into low-power mode automatically when the battery hits 20%? Your body does the exact same thing. And ancient humans' bodies were absolute masters at it. In 2021, Harvard Medical School researchers identified a variant of the PARG gene, a metabolic switch that, under starvation conditions, fundamentally rewires how the body uses energy. Heart rate slows. Core temperature drops. The digestive system deprioritizes everything except essential organ function. And fat storage efficiency skyrockets. People with this variant can survive on 40% fewer calories than average, for weeks, without crossing into fatal organ failure. It's like having a car that gets twice the mileage when the gas gauge hits empty. Doctors today call this variant a metabolic disorder. Ancient humans called it still being alive in February. Here's where it gets personal. This gene variant is most common today in populations with documented famine histories. West African, South Asian, indigenous North American communities carry it at 2 to 3 times the rate of historically food-stable populations. It's not random. It's inheritance. Every famine your ancestors survived left a biological instruction inside your DNA. And here's the thought that should stop you cold. The obesity epidemic disproportionately affecting these same communities isn't a mystery. It's a survival gene operating in a world with surplus calories. The body that saved your great-great-grandmother from starvation is now storing energy it will never need to burn. But genetics only explains part of the story. Because some populations with no special metabolic advantage survived anyway, through something that took thousands of years to build and could be lost in a single generation. In Tanzania, one community has survived at least 7 total famines over recorded history. They have no genetic superpower. What they have is weirder, older, and more impressive than any gene. Think about the last challenging meal you ate. Sushi that looked weird? A vegetable you'd never heard of? Now imagine, the alternative to eating this is death. How adventurous does that make you? Anthropologist Brian Wood spent over a decade living with the Hadza people of northern Tanzania, one of the last true hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. During a severe regional drought in the early 2000s, he watched something remarkable happen. When primary food sources collapsed, game vanished, fruit failed, water holes dried to cracked mud, the Hadza didn't panic. They activated what would documented as a second menu. 43 famine-specific plants that required extraordinary preparation to be edible. Toxic tubers boiled 3 times to neutralize cyanide compounds. Bitter berries fermented in clay pots to break down tannins. Tree bark scraped, dried, and ground into a flour-like paste that tasted, by all accounts, like chalk mixed with disappointment. Nobody's putting 3 times boiled poison tuber on a restaurant menu. But if the other option is starvation, suddenly it gets a 5-star review. None of this knowledge was improvised. It had been memorized across generations, practiced in low-stakes moments so it was ready for high-stakes ones. The community's elders were living libraries, walking databases of last-resort nutrition that took centuries to compile. When a Hadza elder dies without passing their knowledge on, it's not just a personal loss. It's the extinction of a survival manual written in human experience over thousands of years. We have no digital backup for that. But even perfect knowledge means nothing if you're in the wrong place. Because 195,000 years ago, the wrong place was basically everywhere, except one specific beach. You know those places that feel weirdly sacred the moment you arrive, like something enormous happened there even though nobody put up a sign? Pinnacle Point, South Africa, is that place. Except the reason is that it literally saved our entire species. A 2020 paper in Nature documented something that made researchers stop and reread their own data. During the worst drought in human prehistory, a climate event around 195,000 years ago that turned the African interior into near desert, this single limestone coastline stayed productive. Ancient shellfish middens at Pinnacle Point, trash heaps of mussel and oyster shells stacked meters deep, show continuous human occupation across a period when every inland archaeological site goes completely silent. No tools, no hearths, no traces of people, just empty land for thousands of years. The ocean didn't care about the drought. Mussels kept growing, fish kept swimming, and a small group of humans, fewer than 600 individuals, stayed on that coast, ate from the sea, and kept the human species technically alive. 600 people, one beach. The ancestors of 8 billion humans. So next time someone says you can't rely on one thing to survive, technically, the entire human species once relied on one thing. It was shellfish. You're welcome. Genetics confirms this bottleneck. Compared to chimpanzees, who were never this endangered, modern humans have startlingly low genetic diversity. We are, genetically speaking, a species that nearly vanished. The variation you see in 8 billion people today came from a gene pool that once fit on a single beach. Now, how hungry would you have to be to eat dirt? Before you answer, hear me out. Because the science here is genuinely wild. Geophagy, the deliberate eating of clay and soil, has been documented in famine populations across every inhabited continent. And for a long time, scientists assumed it was simply the behavior of people driven to absolute desperation. Then they actually analyzed the clay. Specific clay types consumed during famines are loaded with minerals, calcium, iron, magnesium, that famished bodies desperately need. More importantly, certain clays bind to plant toxins, literally neutralizing poison in the stomach. Communities across Africa, the Americas, Asia, they weren't eating dirt out of madness. They were using the earth as medicine. Meanwhile, modern humans take a probiotic pill that costs $40 a month and feel very progressive about gut health. And then there's the thing historians tend to quietly move past. Cut marks on human bones at famine period sites in prehistoric Europe and Asia, consistent with cannibalism. Not ritual, survival. Zooarchaeologist Cole Castman's analysis found these markers at multiple sites during peak climate collapse periods. Every society across history has a taboo against cannibalism. which means every society across history needed one. You don't build a rule that specifically nobody would ever think of breaking. This isn't sensational. It's just honest. Famine strips civilization down to biology. And biology has only one rule: continue. Here's a question that sounds philosophical, but is actually archaeological. What is the difference between a society and a crowd? Because in a famine, that difference determines who survives. Primatologist Franz de Waal spent 40 years studying food stress in great ape communities. His finding, scarcity doesn't just trigger competition. In species capable of complex social bonds, it intensifies cooperation, but only in groups that had already built trust before the crisis hit. The archaeological evidence is consistent. Mesolithic Scandinavian sites show long-distance food exchange networks spanning hundreds of kilometers during climate downturns. Dried coastal fish traded for inland seeds. Calories distributed across geography to share the risk. These weren't transactions. They were insurance policies built on trust. And then there are the contrasting sites. Isolated family units. Full grain stores found intact, surrounded by their own dead. Hoarding worked for maybe a season. Then it didn't. The people with the most food, who kept it entirely to themselves, ran out of people to help them survive after the food was gone. The oldest economic system in human history wasn't trade or barter. It was gift-giving, the strategic distribution of surplus with the unspoken expectation of reciprocity in crisis. Ancient humans invented social insurance 200,000 years before anyone invented money. Capitalism, it turns out, is a very new experiment. And the data from 100,000 years of human famine suggests the original system worked better. Here's what ancient famine survival actually was. It was a gene that turned a starving body into a precision machine. It was a beach that held the last 600 humans on Earth like a cupped hand. It was an elder who remembered which root to boil 3 times and kept teaching it long after the last famine, because she knew the next one was coming. And it was the trust between people who had decided, before the crisis, that they would not let each other disappear. You are not just a person. You are the output of every catastrophe your ancestors survived and every relationship they chose to keep. Now here's your uncomfortable homework. Open your contacts. How many people in there would actually show up if things got genuinely bad? Not bad day bad. Famine bad. Think about that. Then maybe call one of them. Not because you're being dramatic, but because those are the only relationships that actually count.